Okay, our Monday, June the 1st, 2020 meeting is in session. And I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask Lonnie Waters to lead us with an invocation, please, Lonnie.
Lord, we're going to ask you, Lord, to give us calm across our nation, help our leaders in all categories, local, state, nation. Lord, protect all the first responders through these troubles, and Lord, just ask for peace and calm over our nation. And Lord, we ask you for these blessings. Amen.
Amen. And Councilman Rathfield, will you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance, sir? I love your flag.
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic, which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. The agenda's in front of us. I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Council, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th, 2020 special call meeting and the May the 4th, 2020 regular council meeting. I think we can do both of those in one. So would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as they have been distributed.
Motion to approve as presented.
We
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. The motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is the presentation of the 2019 audit, Rushton and Company. I believe this is where you will shine, Mr. Latimer, Sam Latimer, CPA.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is my first presentation by Zoom. So I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to start off with thanking Brandon and his staff for being accommodating. When we came to do our audit, it was the COVID-19 crisis was just beginning, and they accommodated us, and we appreciate that. So we were able to get our job done. And then I'd also like to especially thank the finance department. Sharon and Lindsay were very, very helpful in getting us everything we needed, very accommodating. So I'm going to share my screen and present. It says I'm disabled to share my screen. Is that, it says the participant, host disabled participant screen sharing. Am I able to share my screen, Brandon? I assume you're the host. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, if you could flip to the next page. Okay, so that was the title page there. Obviously, you know that it's June 1st, and this is your audit presentation. I'm going to go over some of the highlights. I believe, council members, Mayor, you all have a copy of the financial statements with you. Please feel free to stop me along the way. That's a long report. I'm going to cover the highlights. Hopefully everything you want to hear, but feel free to stop me along the way if you have a question. So we were your auditor, and so we issued a audit opinion, and that's on page 1 and 2 of the financial statement. The city's responsibility, the city is responsible for these financial statements. We, as your auditor, are responsible for the opinion on those financial statements. So we audited the city's financial statements according to governmental auditing standards issued by the Comptroller of the United States. So nothing's really changed on this. This is exactly the same as last year. The opinion on those financial statements is what we call an unmodified opinion. That means that we didn't have to change our opinion on those. And so we feel like the numbers are fairly stated. And so that is good. That's what you want. If you want an unmodified opinion, and that's what you have here. If you could flip to page 3, please. So your government-wide financial statements are presented in the front of the basic financial statements. These are your full accrual financial statements. They take all the activity in every bucket. As you know, government, your government is broken up into funds. And so the government-wide statements kind of consolidate all that together on a full accrual basis. And so what we do is that's broken up into your governmental activities, business type activities, and then you have 3 component units. Most are development authorities. You got the Industrial Development Authority, the Downtown Development Authority, and the Jasper Development Authority. Those don't have nearly as much activity as your government-wide activities or in your business type activities. So this is full accrual, just like a normal business type balance sheet. It's what we call the statement of net position. And so that presents the total assets of the city, all accumulated together, minus your liabilities, which gives you the net position of the city, which is basically like equity in a for-profit entity. And so that's called net position. And then you have the statement of activities that takes all that, the income and expenditures for the year, and places those all together. And I've got a highlight on slide 4 to show you. I like to look over the last 3 years, so you can get a kind of a trend analysis here. So if you look, you can see that that residual net position, assets minus liabilities, is broken up into 3 buckets. And so the first bucket is your net investment in capital assets. And so that takes all your infrastructure, all your capital assets, minus any related debts to those capital assets. And at the end of the day, you end up with about $21 million worth of residual investments in capital type assets. And so that's very, very close to what you had last year. The next bucket is restricted net position. And so restricted means it's someone that you've earned that money from, or you've gotten that money from, has restricted the purpose of use for those funds. And so one of the biggest in the city of Jasper is SPLOST funds. And so you can see that balance has gone down quite a bit this year compared to last year. And that's because you spent quite a bit of money on infrastructure. And I'll go over that whenever you see revenues over expenditures. You were actually down this year about $580,000, but that's because you spent a lot of SPLOST funds on resurfacing expenditures. If you look down at the bottom, there's a note. You spent about $1.2 million on roads, and so those are not capitalized. Those were roads that you already had, and so that's basically more like a maintenance and repairs for your roads. And so most of that came through SPLOST, and you can see that in your residual restricted net position there. And then finally, you have what's left over, and that's what's to use at your discretion. And so that's your net position, unrestricted net position. And it's about $2.8 million, which is very similar to last year. And you can see that your total net position was about $24.6 million. Next is the general fund, and I'll go over a couple highlights here. You can see that your revenues in the general fund, the general fund is kind of that bucket that kind of holds everything that doesn't belong in any other governmental fund. But it contains quite a bit of activity. Your revenues increased this year, and some of the highlights of that, it increased about $195,000 which is about 4.6% compared to last year. You can see the highlights there. General sales and use tax increased about 9%. That's very typical. We're seeing that. That is, of course, your sales tax. The economy has been very good everywhere. Pretty much every city and county we're going to, those are increasing compared to the prior year. Now, I would expect some of that to draw back due to the COVID-19 crisis. So that those numbers will probably drop for March, April, and May of this coming year. So that wouldn't be in these numbers, but that's something that you're probably already aware of. Charges for service decreased about $5,000. Licenses and permit revenue was up about $13,000, which was about 12%. And then your fines and fees, your fines and forfeitures increased about $22,000 this year. Moving on down to expenditures, those decreased about $150,000, which is really kind of close to last year. They're down about 3%. Your legislative expenditures increased about $36,000, which is quite an increase. I'm sure you're aware of those expenditures. Your fire and capital expenditures decreased about $500,000. If you remember last year, the city bought a fire truck. And so that's the reason for that decrease. And then your police expenditures are up a little bit. I believe you bought a vehicle, which was probably in the neighborhood of about $70,000 somewhere in there, but that was capital outlay. And then planning and zoning expenditures increased about $25,000, which is up about 50%. And I looked that up. That was your CP&L review of plans and some site work. You probably remember approving some of those expenditures throughout the year. And then in the general fund, we always like to show a measure of liquidity for your general fund. Unassigned fund balance does a good job of letting you know what you have available to spend in your general fund. You can see that the numbers are very close to last year. This year you have about $1.6 million. Last year you had about $1.64 million. So very similar. We like to take a percentage of expenditures over that total unassigned fund balance. And you can see that it's right in line with last year, about 34% of expenditures last year and this year. And then as a measure of how much time that is, that's about 4 months worth of expenditures. Any questions? You can see here that this is a graph of your revenue and expenditures over the last 3 years. You can see that your expenditures have gone down. That's the green line there. So you can see that's positive movement. And then you can see your revenues are increasing. And so that gap in the middle there is your deficit. And so you can see that your deficit has decreased. And don't forget that a large portion of last year was the fire truck. And the fire truck was over $500,000. So you can see that some of that move, not all that move, but you can see that is a positive move in the right direction there. And then the next slide, I'd like to look at fund balance, and you can see that fund balance has decreased a little bit. Don't forget that this is total fund balance that's going down, and you can see your unassigned fund balance pretty close to last year, about 1.642 versus 1,600 this year. And moving to the water and sewer fund, you can see that revenues almost unchanged, pretty close to last year, about $15,000, less than 1% movement there. Water sales increased about $55,000, which is 2%. So really, in the grand, on a percentage basis, not super high. But and then sewer sales decreased just a little bit. You can see that's 0.3%, so right in line. Meter install fees decreased, and that's because they were so high last year. Sewer tie-in revenue decreased. Again, you had some installations and tie-ons, I believe, for some communities that were connecting to your water and sewer systems last year. So that moves those down compared to the last year, but I think the prior year was pretty high compared on a standard during a standard year. And then you have operating expenditures. They've decreased about $85,000, 2%. Couple highlights on those expenditures. Your sludge removal expenditures increased a little bit. Chemical supplies decreased. Repairs and maintenance decreased. I believe that's because you had a higher repairs and maintenance in the prior year. And then your personal service expenditures decreased about $42,000, which is about 2%. I've got a graph of water and sewer fund on the next slide. And so this kind of shows you, it's real hard when you're looking at single year, but it looks like you can see it's a lot easier when you're comparing numbers. Like on this graph here, you can see the top line is your operating expenditures. So almost exactly the same as the prior year. And then your operating expenses, pretty close to last year, not much change, but you can see that the difference between those two lines is your income, but we've also got a graphical representation of your income down at the bottom there. And you can see that last year it was about $387,000, and then net this year is about $456,000. So on an operating basis, that's up about 18% there. So very positive movement in your water and sewer fund. And so moving to on a government auditing standards, we have to issue two separate reports. And one is on your internal control, and also your internal control letter, we address compliance in the testing that we've done for compliance. And so we're required to report on that, and we're happy to report that you had no material weaknesses, but you did one significant deficiency. That's the same deficiency you've had as last year, and that's due to internal control. Management is aware of that, and so not many changes from last year on this report either. And then as your auditor, I'm required to make some communications to you, and that'd be starting on slide 11. Some of this I've just got to read to you, and so our job as the auditor is to plan and perform and obtain reasonable assurance on your financial statements. Kind of like I was explaining when we talked about the letter. We don't look at everything, but on a test basis, we look at it and get evidence to support the amounts in your financial statements and the related disclosures in your financial statements. And so we also look at the accounting that's used, and estimates to make sure that they are reasonable, in the context of what's going on with the city. If you could move to slide 12. And so this year was a pretty active year. GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, had two new statements that we had to implement this year. So GASB 88, no debits or credits changed with GASB 88, but your note disclosures on your debt changed. And so some things got reworded. So some notes payable are now called direct borrowings, and then some bonds payable are called direct placements. So not a lot to report there other than there's some additional disclosure that we're required to report in your financial statements. The second statement that we had to implement this year was GASB 84 fiduciary activities. Your municipal court, the way that that's reported in your financial statements has changed. So now that fund is reported using a statement of net position and a statement of activities, very much like your government-wide financial statements. Overall, not a lot of changes there except the presentation, and that statement is moved up into your basic financial statements. We did take a look at the accounting estimates that the city of Jasper uses, and we thought they were in the biggest that you have are your depreciation for your capital assets. in the allowance for doubtful accounts for property tax and utility billing receivables. And we thought those were appropriate as well. So moving to slide 13, please. We provided, we're happy to report that any adjustments that we thought were necessary to the financial statements, management looked at those and agreed and made those statements or made those adjustments. We really didn't have any uncorrected audit adjustments, but if we do have those, we report those to management. Moving to slide 14, please. Also happy to report there were no disagreements with management. Anything we talked about, we agreed, we were able to agree on. We had no difficulties in performing the audit. In fact, your staff were very accommodating and helped us get this audit completed. Management did take responsibility for the financial statements. Management issued us a letter saying that they are in fact aware of the financial statements and know what's in the financial statements. And so, and made all the management decisions. And so they gave us a letter saying that. We did not use any consultants or any other independent accountants during our audit. When we're doing our audit, we try to provide some additional assistance to our clients. Anybody can do your audit, but when we're there, we like to take a look at your internal control and the way you do things, the policies and procedures. And so when we do that, we communicate that to management and we let them know. And then when we come back the next year, we follow up on that. And so we issue a separate letter to management to let them know on items we think that could help improve their efficiency and processes and those type of things. So we have done that. Moving ahead here, GASB 87, this will affect your financial statements quite a bit. The gist of GASB 87 is your capital leases, just your leases now. We're so used to classifying capital leases and operating leases. Well, now GASB 87 really changes all of that. And so it's really just leases. And so the whole entire framework that leases are reported in your financial statements has changed now. And so that will be quite a big change because the city of Jasper does have some leases, but there's some good news here. This statement was recently extended. This was actually extended last month, and it was extended for 18 months. So we were going to have to do this in 2021, and now it is extended out to 2022. GASB did that due to the COVID-19 crisis. They thought that it would be very difficult to implement that with the current climate and the way things were going. Everybody wasn't able to make it to the office, as I'm sure all you are aware. And so we're appreciative of that because this will probably be a difficult standard to implement, but we're well prepared and we're looking forward to implementing that in December 2022. And so at this time, I'd like to open up with any questions that anyone may have. I know that's the highlights of the presentation, and more than happy to field any questions if you might have any. I know it's a lot of information, so hopefully I didn't go through it too fast and everybody's, but there's a lot going on with that, with the financials. So if I confused anybody, I'm happy to help clear that up. And
Mr. Mayor, and for the council and for the public, obviously we have this available. Should there be any queries, you all, as the elected body, has received it. I'd just like to take a moment. February of 2019, I arrived, and I'll say that mid-year, the staff did a phenomenal job to ensure, as we ended fiscal year 2019, that they did a good job watching their expenditures in light of some revenue sources that did not pan out the way that they had estimated. And I'm just very pleased and thankful for the job that you all did. Y'all have heard me say it before, and the staff of just kind of buying into the system of watching our expenditures. You can see some of the revenue sources in general in our enterprise. Just we're not as robust as anticipated. So Sharon and Lindsay are on from the finance team. So I'd like to personally thank them for their hard work. It's never easy to prepare for an audit, and especially in light of Sharon's interim status coming on board. I'd like to definitely thank her. And Lindsay, as always, thank you for what you do on the day-to-day.
I would like to thank them also. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think they've done a fine job with it.
I would second that as well. I would agree, very much so. Thank you for the opportunity. Rushton and Company does appreciate and enjoys working with the city. And don't forget that we are available throughout the year. So if you're looking through the financials or you have any questions, we're available all the time. Just let someone know, I'm happy to field any questions that you may need or may have.
And thank you, Sam.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sam.
All righty. Thank y'all. I'm going to go by now. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Council, we will now move ahead. Our next item for consideration is old business. Under A, final and approval of ordinance number 2020-15 for a text amendment to the Jasper Zoning Ordinance for inclusion of a new zoning district of dense residential infill, otherwise known as DRI 6. Mr. Brandon Douglas, would you bring this forward to us?
Yes, sir. And for the council and for the public, this is what we would consider a final consideration or a second reading, as it used to be referred to. Whereupon last month at the May 4th meeting, you all approved to move forward through the introduction and the first reading, in essence, of the new zoning district to allow for the dense residential infill DRI 6. Overview, it works out to about 6 units per acre with just over 7,200 square foot for a property size, minimum 1,000 square foot single dwelling unit. And so with that, I think it was very well discussed last month, and Mr. Siphon, I did not put him on, but if y'all do have any questions, nothing has changed from the last meeting by way of the ordinance agenda item. So with that,
Council, I need a motion for approval.
I make a motion, we accept this as second reading of the ordinance.
Second.
And a second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion carries. Under old business, item B, final consideration and approval of ordinance number 2020-07 for requesting to rezone parcel number JA11023 at 26 Hickory Street from DRI 6. Again, Brandon, please, sir.
yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Council. I believe the applicant, Mr. Reese, is here as well. Nothing has changed from the May 4th meeting where you all had considered the first reading of sorts, and this is the final consideration or second reading. As you may recall, Mr. Reese had originally anticipated utilizing the R3 zoning classification. Through the efforts of the committee and legal staff, we're able to work on the aforementioned DRI. Now that it has been approved, as Mr. Siphon stated last month, in essence, if you all were to receive this as a favorable final consideration and second reading, then Mr. Reese will be taking advantage of the DRI 6, which would yield, as a synopsis, 4 units on the property. And with that, there's been no other changes from the last month. And I'll yield to Mr. Siphon or Mr. Reese. Do you have any questions for them?
Council, I need a motion to approve this final consideration.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same. The motion carries. And Mr. Reese, thank you for your patience, sir.
Thank you all so much for doing this, and now you have the ball in my court and I have to perform. I appreciate your going to the trouble to work through this. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing that. Thank you, sir. Looking ahead on old business, item C, final consideration and approval of ordinance number 2020-14 for a request to rezone parcel number 030C050 at 1067 Philadelphia Road from C2 to R3. We'll ask Brandon to bring this to us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and council, and for the public, this is another application that had been made and gone through the public hearing process through the Planning and Zoning Commission. It was considered the May 4th council meeting, where it was favorably considered, or in essence, a first reading. The synopsis of this particular project is there's 8+ acres just off of Philadelphia Road that is zoned commercial. Through the staff analysis and the staff report, it had been identified as from a land use perspective, favorably considered from staff. As such, you all did affirm and vote in favor. And this is the second reading in essence. And if I didn't mention, it is a senior housing development, and I believe the applicant is here if there are any questions. This ordinance does contain the 4 conditions as discussed last month, and nothing has changed from the May 4th meeting.
Are there any questions, council?
Brandon, the conditions from last meeting moving forward to this meeting are the exact same presented? Is that correct?
That is correct. The ordinance as identified as 2020-14.
Thank you.
Council, I entertain a motion to accept this rezoning request.
Make a motion with approval with identical conditions.
And a second, please.
Second.
Is there any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same. The motion carries. Thank you, sir. Section 8, new business, item A, consideration of ordinance number 2020-16 for a request to rezone, and ordinance number 2020-17 for annexation of parcel number 053D 079.003 at 41121 Highway 515 South. And that would be from C2 to C2 into the city of Jasper. They're asking for rezoning and annexation into the city. And I believe that is North Georgia Grady.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, council, and for the public. This particular request, as identified on the agenda, is for a rezone and annexation. The reason in that order is it is discretion to rezone the property to a comparable land And then subsequently, if favorable by the applicant, then to annex to ensure it's not annexed and then not to a comparable land use as the applicant. This particular one is, as the mayor mentioned, grading. They have probably 80-90% done with construction, with the maintenance shop and offices, moving, relocating from the offices off of Highway 108 onto this site. The staff analysis, staff report, as in the packet, does illustrate that this particular project is in the C2 district. It's currently in the Highway Business District of the county, unincorporated part of the county. Your packet also with certain criteria as found in section 94-43 of our ordinance. The future land use map is the arterial commercial corridor character area, which essentially flows the entire corridor throughout our community. There are a mix of different uses from residential to agricultural to commercial. This particular property and the land use, or the zoning requested is comparable with surrounding and is compatible with our own criteria. So with that, this was heard at the planning and zoning meeting that was conducted on May 26th. There was no one that spoke out way or the other on this particular item. The applicant has worked with a land development consultant and identified through a written letter you all have that the site as graded and as developed is not, a better word, it's not allowance for a septic system. Therefore, through the rezone annexation to the city, the applicant would be permitted to tie into the city sewer system. As your packet will illustrate, the city staff and the applicant have discussed that any cost associated with tying into our sewer system will be borne by the applicant. Environmental health did substantiate the report. You all have that document as well. Should there be any questions? So beyond that, I'll let you just let council hear from you, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay, Lonnie.
Yes, we've been talking and discussing this property even before Mr. Powell took it over. And now that he's purchased it and built his buildings, he's agreed to all stipulations, everything we requested from him. And in that other obligation from the county will fulfill the rest of the inspections, give them a CO, and then it'll be released from their jurisdiction, turned over to the city if this is approved tonight.
Council, any further questions? If not, I would entertain a motion that we approve this for rezoning and annexation to our city.
I make a motion that we approve the annexation. Sorry. And the zoning.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
The only discussion, that motion does have approval with conditions as presented, correct?
That is correct. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion is carried. Under new business, item B, consideration of ordinance number 2020-18 for a text amendment to the Jasper Zoning Ordinance for the section of permitted and conditional uses by districts to allow the use of a brewery the Central Business District. Ask our city manager, Brandon, if you will, to bring this to us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. And just for background on this particular item, there had been an entity looking at some locations in downtown Jasper. Through due diligence, it was revealed that the zoning in the Central Business District, the CBD district, did not have a permitted use by right or conditional use associated with breweries. So as you recall, through the chart of permitted uses by right, and there's associated zoning applications with different uses, the brewery was allowed in the C2 and the M1, the industrial. I believe that the brewery ordinance was such that it was created with the anticipation that there was a desire to recruit and or help facilitate a brewery to open. So when the potential, I guess, applicant, for better word, was looking at it, staff along with Mr. Siphon advised that we could amend the zoning ordinance to a text amendment to allow for breweries in a central business district. So there's not an applicant. This is a staff-driven initiative to just include that little X mark in the actual CBD district. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did hear this request at their May 26th meeting. It was favorably received. There were no public in attendance to speak for or against. As such, it's presented to you all tonight for further action.
Council, I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance for a text amendment to the Jasper zoning for the section of permitted and conditional uses by the districts to allow the use of a brewery in the Central Business District.
Motion to approve as presented.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, please. Motion carries. Thank you. Under new business, item C, consideration and approval of an agreement between the City of Jasper and Turnip Seed Engineers for professional services for the additions to the water pollution control plant and for Mayor and our city manager to execute final document upon review and acceptance from the city attorney. And that was a very, very long and large document. So, so any discussion on this before we move to a vote? If not, then council, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Mr. Siphon, if you want to unmute Mr. Siphon, I think we'll be able to hear you then. Okay.
Here, hopefully you can hear me in council. I looked over the contract and I sent some provisions that were in special stipulations. I sent it in an email today. And if we can just add those special stipulations to the contract, then the contract's ready for approval.
Have you heard anything back from Turnip Seed about the stipulations?
I have not heard anything back from him. You know, I only got the contract, I think, on Thursday or Friday, so I didn't get them out to him till today. I think most of them he won't have a problem with, but there may be some that I'll need to discuss with him.
You're comfortable with us approving the contract with the stipulations?
Yes.
All right.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, and for Mr. Siphon, one of the reasons why the wording of the agenda item is reflecting as in the event if Mr. Siphon and the engineering firm agree, I think, on any sort of, I don't want to say compromise, but anything that could be, instead of having to delay this another month, I think we're all comfortable giving Mr. Siphon authorization to work out any of those special stipulations. I, for one, am not qualified enough to speak on the steps, but I feel comfortable that he'd protect the city's interest as Turnip is a partner with us.
There was a Chris on, was that not Pojay?
He was copied, but for full disclosure.
Oh, he was on the meeting.
Pardon?
He was on the attendant list. There was a Chris on the list. He's gone now, but.
I'm not sure if that was him or not. No, sir. I don't know.
I think that was for the group.
Okay, so council, I would entertain a motion to approve this agreement between the city of Jasper and Turnip Engineers for professional services as outlined with stipulations.
I make a motion that we approve with the stipulations worked out by Mr. Siphon with engineering company.
In turnip seed.
Yes, Bid Turnip Seeds. I didn't know if they'd changed their name.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same. Motion carries. Under new business, item D, consideration and approval of the purchase of up to 4 sets of turnout gear and associated apparel for the Jasper Fire Department at a cost not to exceed $12,000 and to amend the 2020 budget to reflect the purchase thereof. Our city manager, Brandon, will bring this to us.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and council and the public. I think Chief Roper in his t-shirt wanted to demonstrate some of the turnout gear, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to accommodate us tonight. But nevertheless, as your staff report will illustrate, there was the desire and need for purchasing 3 sets of turnout gear that I believe had extended past. Yes, sir. There were 4. There was actually 3 identified immediate needs. There was 1, for full disclosure, that does not have an immediate need. However, while doing this, I advised Finance and Chief Roper that it may behoove us to go ahead and seek out we have been operating off of some part-time work in the last couple of months. And so should we be able to recruit another firefighter, we'd be able to then have that position or that suit available for fitting. So the actual quote essentially a sole source provider. It was in your packet. It was just at about $2,300 per set. However, that's just, I believe, in the pants.
Correct. Yes.
So some of the accessory stuff, I kind of thought it would be a good practice to include up to about $3,000 per. And I'll let Chief just kind of go into any details about anything else.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. City Manager is correct. We typically stock gloves, firefighting gloves. A couple of these guys will have to have boots because of size issues. One of those sets of gear is worn to a point where it's feasibly not repairable. Typically, in the line of business we're in, you get small tears and cuts, and we spend a couple $300 fixing it, which saves a $2,300 set of gear. We've got one set that's past that. It's not safe anymore. The other 2 current sets are fit issues. Unfortunately, it has to fit you perfectly for it to work. So in other words, if somebody my size leaves and someone Councilman Raffield's size replaces me, obviously he's a wee bit shorter than I am. So the 4th set is for a future part-timer that I foresee coming to work for us in the near future. So, I mean, like I said, he will have to have boots and gloves and everything. So I'm confident that I can make this purchase work and stay under that $12,000 cap.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, Chief is very diligent in keeping budgetary matters. For full disclosure, what we're in essence doing is cutting one of the items in the budget that was the cascade fill system that Chief and the department feel as though they can get the remainder of this year with what they have. So knowing that that expenditure is not going to take place, we had said that before we do our 2020 budget mid-year amendment in July, let's go ahead and put this request in to see if it's authorized, and then would reflect the, there will be a little bit of a cost savings between the Cascade and this, but that's just kind of where some of the funds are being appropriated from.
Council, what's your pleasure? Entertain a motion to approve the purchase of up to 4 sets of turnout gear not to exceed $12,000.
I make the motion.
If I might, Jim, quickly, Chief Roper, do you know, going over your department, do you have any other sets of gear that would quickly turn into something unrepairable?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, we've evaluated everything. Most everything's in great shape. Some of it's, midline, but we can still get another couple of years out of it. Barring obviously another bargain barn fire or something like that. But no, I think we're in great shape. That one set, like I said, it's worn beyond repair. The other two are more fit issues than anything. And those guys are wearing older substandard gear now because the two newer sets simply won't fit them. So they're in old substandard gear right now with all three of them.
Any other questions at this point in time for Chief? I will entertain a motion to approve purchase of the 4 sets for up to no more than not to exceed $12,000.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
You're very welcome, Chief. Under new business item E, consideration and approval of replacing the water line along Myrtle Street at a cost to not exceed $15,000, including the acquisition of a boring machine and associated pipe. I believe this is the same Myrtle Street that we brought up in our session back in, I believe, what was it, January? So last Councilmember Dr. Proctor and Councilmember Faust, if they would bring those forward to us.
You're correct, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the initiatives that we had hoped to accomplish surrounding infrastructure updates, and excited to be able to move forward with this. Apparently, I think the plan is for replacement of some aged galvanized piping there, and with a 2-inch line that will should handle that. I guess there have been frequent reports and complaints, including over the past weekend, about poor water pressure there, and it's exciting to start addressing some of these infrastructure issues. That's all I have.
And then they're going to get a new boring missile, which will be something we'll be able to use in the future too. Basically, it's a machine that's going to let them get up under driveways without messing driveways. So it's really a great tool.
And Brandon, do you have anything further to say to that?
They've covered it. None from us.
I had a brief conversation with David Hall this afternoon about the boring machine. It's accurate up to about 30 feet, which will allow you to get across a typical 2-lane highway. And so I think it's something that we can use. I think there's I can't remember how many driveways he said in this little stretch, but something we definitely can use.
Council, entertain a motion. The, at a cost not to exceed $15,000, the acquisition of a boring machine and associated pipe to make a lot of people on Myrtle Street very happy.
Motion to approve as presented.
And
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Under new business, item F, consideration approval of ordinance number 2020-19 for the purchasing policy for the city of Jasper. This is Council Member Looney that would like to bring this to us, along with Council Member Snavy.
Council, at our retreat in January, we discussed a purchasing policy for the city. Lindsay has put a lot of hours into this. It is in your package. The nice thing about purchasing policies is if in the next few years we outgrow it, it can be changed. But this is, if approved, this will be a policy that can lead us, and I suggest it be approved.
And Council Member Snavy, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I agree. Lindsay's put a lot of work in it. We've done adjusting back and forth, trying to tweak it. And I feel like it's a good policy for the city. A lot of safeguards and holding people responsible for what they're doing. I think it's a good policy and protection, and something that is going to be very doable for Brandon to work with.
And Lindsay, we invite you to hold forth on this also.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It has been a lot of work, but Jim and Ann's been great reviewing it, and Brandon's reviewed it. I've looked at it so much, I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm seeing the same thing over and over, but I think it would be a great policy. I think we do need to have something in place and have more controls. You can't ever have too many controls. So I think it would be a good thing to have.
Yes.
Thank you for the work. Thank you all for the work. That's a lot of really good work to let us go forward.
And I do.
Mayor, can I make one comment?
Sure.
I looked over the policy over the weekend, and on page 9 of the policy, under authority, contracts for up to 1 year of service and less than $25,000 will be awarded after approval by the city manager and signed by the mayor. From an administrative policy viewpoint, I think that makes a lot of great sense, because it lets the city manager move the business to the city board without having to wait for council. But under the charter, section 6.25 of the charter, it basically says that the city council will approve contracts. And so we got sort of a conflict there. What the case law says is that if the contract doesn't follow what the charter provides, then it can be voidable at the discretion of the city council. The city council can accept it. So on one hand, I don't have an issue with the language that's in the policy but I just wanted y'all to be aware that it doesn't strictly follow what the charter says. And, but ironically, it can kind of help protect the city also. So just wanted to voice that concern to you. I thought it was a great policy. In reading through it, I thought it'll work well for the city.
Brandon?
So it is the less than $25,000 contracts that concerns you?
That's correct.
And just for, not that it may or may not help, but I advised Lindsay today, leave it to me to wait till the very, very last moment to look over y'all's work. But I did look over it. And I did advise her that because this is being considered through adoption through an ordinance, that this would in essence, I believe, be the first and then the final consideration next month. I did want to point out that that particular section that Mr. Siphon had pointed out, I had struck through it and put 10,000. Whether that is or is not advisable, at least to try to mirror the other procurement and purchasing procedures, and just for the general public, by way of the highlights of this purchasing policy through the adoption of an ordinance, what we're looking at is purchasing levels of $1,000 to the department head, $1,000 to $5,000 to the city manager, $5,000 and 1 cent to $10,000 of the city manager and the appointed committee chair, and then over $10,000 to the mayor and city council. So as a practice, not a policy, I think right now we've been adhering to the 5,000 coming to you all. So I think the purchasing levels, I was trying to mirror in essence that anything that staff and the committee chair were to approve up to 10 and then 10,000 and beyond. And if that threshold may help Mr. Siphon ease some of the concerns, that in essence, most of the contracts, so to speak, would come before council, I think at that threshold maybe. Does that seem to help?
It does help. And like I said, strict adherence to the charter in this instance can kind of help the city in that the contracts can be valid in the discretion of the council.
Do we need to make the change in the policy and then go from there?
Change it to $10,000? Is that,
or whatever he thinks is
Brandon,
legal.
is that your suggestion?
That's mine. I mean, I've made some other suggestions that, if favorably reviewed conceptually with this policy as an ordinance, what would happen is the final addition, so to speak, will be presented to you all for the July meeting, whereupon any of those changes, mostly not of substance, but just some clerical. I think that one was the only one of substance that I really changed.
Then I'll make the motion that purchasing policy be approved, understanding or approved for first reading, understanding that in the second reading there will be changes to the spending limits.
Under that section.
Yes.
So
Would that be satisfactory, Mr. Siphon?
I think it is satisfactory. Like I said, the contracts are not void. But it does give the city an out if for some reason you don't like that contract under, a $9,000 contract, the council has a problem with it. We could take the position it's void.
Okay.
But I would anticipate that the council would have probably no problem with most of those small contracts.
Right.
And I guess then we would add a request that the small contracts be reported to council at the time that they are approved. Contracts less than $10,000 be included in the report to council.
And I think that's a great idea.
Now I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Who provided the second?
Did you not raise your hand?
I did now, second.
Okay, I have a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thanks, Mr. Rathfield. That motion has carried. Council, I will entertain a motion that we adjourn to executive session for purposes of legal discussion.
Mayor, I believe we have item G.
I tried to skip item G.
The committee did a lot of work. I would hate to skip that item.
In the interest of
Stella put a lot of work in on this one. Let's get it.
well, let's do it then. Okay, so we have a consideration and approval of the job descriptions for mechanic, meter reader supervisor, municipal court clerk, office manager for the police department, police captain, police corporal, police detective, police lieutenant, police officer, police sergeant, public works crew leader, public works equipment operator, public works technician, distribution crew leader, water distribution equipment operator, water supply crew leader, water supply equipment operator, and water supply technician. And we'll let Mr. Luke read this to us. This looks like something that he would dream of on an unusual day.
Yeah, this is a continuation of getting job descriptions for each position. If you remember at our last meeting, we approved a number of them. This is another set, and I'm figuring at least one more to come after this. All job descriptions have been approved or have been reviewed by the department heads. And again, Stella needs to be commended, not condemned. If she does another set, she may need to be condemned, but commended for the work done on these. And I'll make that a motion that these job descriptions be approved.
Stella has worked very hard on these, and we would like to thank her for her hard work in getting these to us. And I agree with Jim. There's going to be some more coming down the line.
Would that be a second from you?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this very long list of job descriptions. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Recommendation was backsliding, but I appreciate the committee and Stella's and staff's hard work. Really great job.
It's amazing, and it's all what we want. Thank you so much. So any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Carried unanimously.
Great job.
Okay, now I would entertain a motion that we go into executive session for purposes of legal.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we will wait on Brandon at this point in time. And Brandon, would you tell us how we want to do this to make sure we're legal?
Yes, sir, Mr. Council, and for the public, what we'll be doing is the recording will continue as the meeting is being conducted. I will be going on mute and I will be turning the camera off. Subsequently, I will be reaching out to Mr. Siphon along with the 6 elected officials, the mayor, and the 5 council members into executive session via teleconference provided in this new way of doing business temporarily. So with that, I'll just ask that each of the elected go on mute and go on camera off. And when we get out, we'll come back to and finish the meeting.
Council, I would entertain a motion to come out of executive session and go back into regular.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now in regular session, and our next item is committee reports. Our development committee, that would be council members Dr. Sonny Proctor and Kirk. I think it's Kirk Rathfield.
Well, we've had some great exciting stuff and some challenging stuff. But through committee, we've had several meetings now with Clark, Patterson, and Lee over our planning and zoning reboot, so to speak. And most recently, we had a fairly lengthy but productive meeting over signage. And I think things are going really well. And I think that's all I have.
So to that note, Dr. Proctor's right. The dialogue continues on how to create a cohesive vision and opportunity in our community. Non-committee related, as you can tell, I'm wearing a jail hat. And I just wanted to give an update really quickly. A lot of you helped support the First Foundation of Pickens County, which provides free books to children under 5 in our community. And I was one of the detainees, raised over $1,400. And altogether, the 10 detainees, we raised over $14,000. So children in our community will benefit greatly. Sue Appleton and her group did a fantastic job. And that's a wonderful event that was held in downtown Jasper. A lot of folks attended, and our police chief and his staff helped. So thank you all very much for posting my bail and letting me jump out of jail.
Thank you for doing it, Kurt.
Yeah.
Congratulations for
Way to go,
getting out.
Kurt. Okay, our item B would be Streets and Parks Committee, council members Ann Snavy and John Faust.
Well, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but the city crews have been real busy all over town, cleaning things up and making it look nice. They've cleaned up Peace Park, got some new picnic tables out there. Just very, very excited with the changes that's happening, and I'm very proud of what the city's been doing.
Heard a lot of good compliments on the picnic tables for sure. So hope to continue to do some more.
Now, refresh my memory a little bit, and we're waiting on what to set those picnic tables or the recreation equipment?
For the equipment.
Waiting on the equipment, huh?
We are waiting on the equipment at this point. It has been ordered, and so we're waiting on the equipment to come in, and then they'll get it installed.
Look forward to that. Administration Committee, council members Jim Looney and Ann Snavy.
I appreciate the approval of the purchasing policy and the job descriptions. Again, I thank staff for all the work that's going into that. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but the city finance director, city clerk position is being posted, and I know we are receiving applications. So hopefully we'll have some activity on that soon. I would like to request staff to look into cost for a potential credit of business occupation tax to some of our businesses, so that could be discussed at a meeting in the future.
I'll be glad to try to look at that. And I think Sonny mentioned he would too.
Yeah, I think staff need to put some costs together, give us a better idea of what
Right.
we're really looking at here.
I don't know if now's the time to mention it, but I think there's some grant, or I don't know if you call it a grant, but CARES money, Brandon, that might could help that, or.
Yes, sir. And we had a cohort of some Metro city managers meet last week, and there was a submittal made by all cities throughout the state of Georgia to tap into some of those monies. I don't think the details have been disclosed, but I think they're going to do it kind of on a pro rata share of your population. So the terms of how you can expend those monies. So I think the conservative approach of at least preliminarily looking at cost of at least crediting if we're not able to provide funds directly. But if there can be some offsetting of those funds into our coffers, that could then be applied towards that credit. We can definitely look at that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Police and Fire Committee, Council members Kirk Rathfield and Jim Looney.
I think we skipped over
Item D,
I'm sorry?
line item D.
water wastewater.
No, I skipped it. Water, wastewater. Council members John Faust and Dr. Sonny Proctor.
Well, we continue to move forward with our wastewater plans, and that's really exciting. We've got some infrastructure stuff coming out that it's not directly coming out of the committee, I guess, but it certainly came out of the retreat. I would like to, the recent, really several months ago, I had some conversations around some of our service agreements. And as it relates to that, and here recently that has come up again. So I would like to ask staff to look into our service agreements around water, with some of our tie-ins and what the terms and conditions of those are, and then report back to us so we can have a firm grasp on what the specifics of all those agreements are as it relates to water. So.
Yes, sir.
And I'd just like to thank all the people in the water department for doing a fine job and keeping the city going. And I'm very excited about this over on Myrtle Street. That's going to be a great improvement for the people over there, the citizens of Jasper. All benefit. So it's great.
Item E, Police and Fire. Council members Kirk Rathfield and Jim Looney.
Go ahead, Kirk.
On the end of the police department, fittings and measurements for bulletproof vests have occurred. I believe the last one completed was last Friday. Should have more information quickly from the police chief. And, it's one of those, I believe the next step is to implement policy in reference to the bulletproof vest. That's going to be a crucial next step for us. And that's something we probably want to review.
Looney, Mr. Looney.
Appreciate the approval of the new turnout gear for the fire department. That did not come at a real good time for the city, but thankfully it's something that can be done and needed to be done. So I appreciate council approving that purchase.
On a committee note, Mayor, if I might, I want to commend our city manager. This idea of chair and co-chair for our committees has worked wonderfully. I've really enjoyed it. Even working with Jim Looney, which is a task. But in all reality, the committees have been wonderful. We've seen tonight a lot of the committee work, a lot of the staff work from Stella and Lindsay and Sharon and all of them. So this is phenomenal that this work is progressing in such a great manner for the city. We're getting a lot accomplished. And so thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everybody.
Agreed. Totally.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. And speaking of Brandon, how about a financial report?
Yes, sir. I will quickly go through. Believe in your packets, and Lindsay is on, so I have to give her credit for getting this out to you all in your packets. But in the event, I talk about, and just to recap, the audit that was presented this evening. Very pleased with how we ended up fiscal year 2019. 2020, there have been some opportunities this year that we still will continue doing stuff and getting stuff done. The COVID-19 is obviously going to have an effect. We will be presenting you all with a mid-year 2020 budget amendment in July. But for the purposes, we still are trending revenue over expenditures of 47,759.56. Essentially, our revenues have come in at 1.958,473, which has trended a slight down from last month in terms of what we project. Expenditures, we are trying to hold steady to try to keep that revenue over expenditures as best we can. 1.910714. So the significance of that is the employees are still doing a phenomenal job of trying to make sure that we are just not overspending what we're bringing in. That's always difficult, especially in light of the pandemic. The loss receipts, fortunately, have trended up. We're at 124,265. So that is assisting us, but in your 2020 amended budget, we may have to drive down some of those revenue projections because of a lot of the unknown. The TVT, title ad valorem tax, I put this on here just to give some perspective again of $4,450 compared to $27 last year. The building department total fees of approximately $1,600. Water and sewer fund revenues over expenditures $236,889. Trending revenues of $1.898916. Expenditures $1,662,027. It was fortunate that our leachate did trend up of $97,000, but conversely, the cost of construction aid we recorded zero. That's just the nature we're in. We do have the attached checks written over $5,000 in your package on that. And SPLOST, we are still in 2019 SPLOST. We do carry a balance, and we'll be getting the committee as soon as possible to talk about our remaining SPLOST projects of sidewalks. We are carrying a balance of we're just nearly at 600,000. So we do have a robust fund balance in SPLOST to help us with some sidewalk projects. That's all on
Good.
Good. And development reports. Is Lonnie still with us, or is he?
I think he did sign off.
Sign off. Okay. And police report. I don't see Love Alone.
We got that in the mail.
We got it
email today.
Okay, so I did get that. Everybody else satisfied with that? And what about the fire report from Chief?
We got it also today.
Same.
So everybody's satisfied with that?
Yes.
Now we come to that great important part of our business cycle when, a request to adjourn or a motion to adjourn is always in order.
I would say I'd move we go home, but we're already there most of us. So I move we adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. And thank you all for a great progressive evening.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mike.
everyone. Have a